and there's always a message somehow. So we're glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. Teri, we're so glad you're here.
Oh, me too, Ruth. Good morning. And good morning, everyone. Let's
All
just
right.
take a moment to go into our hearts. That's how we start out our meditations. The heart is the connector, and the breath brings us right to the divine. So if you want to comfortably close your eyes or leave them open, just start taking that breath into your heart center. And while you're doing that, I'm going to invite our angels to surround us with that angelic love, starting with Archangel Raphael. We invoke the energy of Raphael, the energy of air. Raphael, the angel of healing. Help us heal during this time together today, please. And then we go to Archangel Michael, our protector, with the energy of fire, heating up the area that we're in. Archangel Gabriel, coming in with the energy of water to give us clarity, to just wash away whatever needs to be cleared out of our energy. And then we go to Archangel Uriel. Uriel comes in with the element of earth. And as he comes in, he always reminds us to ground. So let's do that with your next breath. Just see it going down the length of your body, down to your root chakra, out the bottom of your feet, and connecting in with Mama Gaia, going deep, deep, deep down to the very core of Gaia. And in that center, that crystalline center, you'll become more grounded, see your breath just spreading out like roots and taking in all of that delicious, grounding, balancing energy. And then bring that back up with your breath, back up through your feet, your legs, sacral, solar plexus, and into your heart center. Anchor it there. Doesn't that feel great to do that? Feeling more balanced, more centered. And with the next breath, we're now going to focus our intention and our breath upward and out into the universe as we connect in with our higher self, with the angelic realm, and to the great central sun of the divine. Here we ask the Creator to join, to bless us in this meditation time together. We bring in Divine Mother, Mary Magdalene, Christ consciousness, and the Holy Spirit, asking to be filled with that kind of beautiful energy to focus in on what is needed for our best and highest good. So we breathe that energy down through our crown, third eye, throat, and into our heart space, anchoring it with the earth energy. And just take a moment to take all of that in. I know that's a lot, but just connect in with the angels and they'll guide as we ask them to guide this meditation, our thoughts, and where we're headed today as we excavate and find out what Spirit wants us to focus on, to see, to hear, and the blessings that will come from doing so. So just breathe in comfortably now, and let's see where this takes us. So, Ruth, I know you had already felt the presence of Divine Mother. And when I invited her in, I just saw her wrapping all of us, me, you, everyone joining, wrapping us in her arms of love.
Thank you, Teri. So there's already been a lot of movement so far. The first thing they did, sometimes, Teri, when they fly us off somewhere and we can see all this land moving under us like a big IMAX movie,
Right.
started like that and ended up going to the space. We've worked here before, the space of Luxor, Jerusalem, and Syria. And then they came down the Nile. And then I was seeing Moses as a baby in the basket in the Nile. So they've had us work here before. And that's where they've got us. And remind me, Teri, was it Pharaoh's daughter? Who was the daughter that picked up Moses as a baby?
It was Harrod's daughter.
Harrod's daughter, King Harrod's daughter. There's something about that moment that she picks up the basket and the love connection between her and the baby. That's what they're showing me is that very moment.
I know there's not a lot of details about it, but I'm feeling that he was crying out, and she responded to that cry, just compassion. She wasn't a mother at the time, but that innate mothering capacity of just, I need to help. And I think a lot of that was Divine Mother's influence, leading her to that place where she could help.
And what I'm hearing is love is love. I mean, this became an adopted child. Love is love. Did she have to hide him because King Herod was calling for the death of all the boys, young boys 2 and under? So did she have to hide him to keep him, or do you think?
I think she fought to keep him. I think she stood up to her father, if I remember that correctly. Yeah, she was keeping the child safe. I don't know how long she hid him before she let her father know, or if she let him know, but I'm remembering that there was something about her fighting to help this child.
Well, in my little human mind, I just think this had to have been divinely planned.
And I think the ones being persecuted were in a different part from where they were, from where the Pharaoh and or the king and his daughter were. So I don't think the child would have been in much danger being in that area. I could be wrong, but I just know it was divine intervention. So Moses was very protected all the way around. And don't you wonder, I wonder, if he heard the story being told to him and understood the significance of the miracle of him escaping. If I heard something like that, I would feel very blessed, very grateful. And I think Moses led his life in service to people from there on.
Well, you don't do the things he did without understanding a great bigger picture of God, of purpose. I don't know that people just become that powerful.
He had a divine spotlight shining on him for sure. And God had the purpose in mind for him to lead the people. It just goes to show there's no stopping when we have a divine plan. There's divine protection, There's divine time for us to flourish and to come into that purpose.
Harrod's daughter was in her own divine spotlight. The moment she heard that cry or somehow got the message, go pick up that baby. Divine Mother keeps focusing in on that love. There's something about that intensity of love.
I'm also seeing, Ruth, that she wasn't alone. She had her, I guess she called them handmaidens, that always attended to her and made sure that she was safe. So it wasn't just her that was there when the baby was found. I would love to be there and hear that conversation with her and those surrounding her, and the awe of finding the baby alive to begin with. Who knows how long he was in that basket in the water.
There's got to be a movie about this.
I'm sure there must be.
Yeah.
I'm watching the one that Spirit's showing.
I know. I know. I'm thinking this needs to be a movie if it's not.
And also showing the protection, because that's not a nice river sometimes. It has lots of dangerous creatures in it. So, I mean, the whole thing is just so miraculous to think of the survival of this child. Against all odds is what I'm hearing. How many times in life do we struggle with challenges and then we break through against all odds when everything looks kind of perilous, and yet here we are standing on the other side of that challenge.
But at those moments, is someone in that divine spotlight? This is the course. This is what you're supposed to go through. This is you stepping into your power and going through it. I'm thinking this is called something like in the divine spotlight.
That Yeah, and we're not all called to be Moses.
No, 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 no.
Divine purpose is when we move through those challenges, which is our lesson here on earth, we can see more clearly because the spotlight is being shown on us. And we can see, okay, now what? What's the next step? And so many question that. What's my next step? Now that I've had this breakthrough, where do I go from here? It could be as simple as just teaching another, sharing your story with somebody, sharing a smile. There's many ways that we can reach out to people.
Um, Pamela Brown used the term spiritual breadcrumbs, excuse me, to me, and sort of meaning when you get that little hit and you take that spiritual breadcrumb and then it opens the door to another something to happen and then another step happens and another, but those spiritual breadcrumbs, and they're showing me that right now, and I'm likening that divine spotlight to a spiritual breadcrumb. Either it's for your own growth or something that you do that then sets something in motion for somebody else. But the synergy connected to the spiritual breadcrumbs. I know that's a stretch, it's a jump, but
Nope, I think it's perfect. And so many times we can look back on our experiences and back on our life and the things that we come through and see the breadcrumbs. We can see how everything was set up for us to go into that divine purpose, and all the pieces start to fall into place.
but I think what came before that was somebody hearing the nudge, having the strength to take that next step. And then it lays open this next something to happen. They're taking me back to, boy, they're really drilling this one in. Harrod's daughter picking the baby up out of the water and her taking that step, which was a very brave step, probably a dangerous step. I mean, she could have been locked up forever. But her coming to the table, taking that step, which then enabled other things to happen afterwards for Moses and the people that Moses impacted. Okay, going back to the breadcrumbs. Wow, they're drilling deep here. Um, so she was paying attention to the spiritual breadcrumbs that led her to the baby in the water. Then, as she took the baby out of the water, it's like the divine spotlight on her of, yes, this is supposed to happen. And then setting those other things up to happen. Spiritual breadcrumbs. Okay, so I guess the question for us is, Are you aware of the spiritual breadcrumbs that are being offered to you, presented to you? Are you brave? Are you taking those spiritual breadcrumbs or are you ignoring them? And what are we missing when we don't accept those, take the next step of the spiritual breadcrumbs? What are we missing?
And you can feel that, Ruth. I have many times. I'm like, there's just something more. There's something that hasn't been exposed yet, or that I'm not understanding yet. But when we're not completely in alignment with our purpose, with our higher self, we feel that there's something missing, right? There's something else that we need to pay attention to.
So, Teri, they want us to talk about how do we know if there's a spiritual breadcrumb in front of us?
You know, some of us are very stubborn, talking about myself here, and sometimes we almost have to be hit over the head to pay attention and to look up. Sometimes people lose everything or most everything of material goods or health before they're able to open their eyes and see what was placed right there all along. So it's a nudge at times to say, hey, look over here. Sometimes we have to reach that point of searching. So when our soul starts to search, then the breadcrumbs are always there. Are always placed for us to follow the spirit. Sometimes we hear it as well. You know, we have these spiritual gifts that are a birthright. And so we can hear spirit talk to us. We can hear the angels when they whisper in our ear. Or we can see the signs that they place. And they do. They place lots of signs for us. It may be another person that speaks a word. It may be a sign, a license plate, something to get our attention so that we know that there's communication happening. But always question.
They say sharpen your intuition.
Mhm,
And there's ways that you can do that.
absolutely. Meditation, that's one of the powerful assets we have to tap into spirit. Going in and being alone, for some, that's scary. Some people can't face themselves and sitting alone with yourself, but it's the best thing you can do to hear more clearly. And ask to connect with Archangel Gabriel. Gabriel's the one that will help us to hear, see, to understand more fully, and give us the clarity we need.
Michael's one of my go-tos, certainly. Divine Mother, Raphael.
Sometimes we get in our own way. We question and doubt instead of questioning and opening up to what could be. So when you do ask the questions, if you think that you're hearing an answer or you're seeing something, just pause for a moment and ask your higher self, am I hearing this right? Is this for me? Is this my message?
Yep.
You'll always know, you'll always get the confirmation.
Sometimes a message will come in a dream and you wake up having thought about somebody.
And I wonder, Ruth, about those breadcrumbs that led Harrod's daughter down to Moses. Did she have a dream? Did she have a nudge? You never know what your calling is. You never know that purpose. So when you hear something, just ask for clarification and step out of your comfort zone or step in the direction that you're hearing to go. You never know what Moses you might find in your life.
This is interesting. So, when I think of spiritual breadcrumbs, I think of, oh, like maybe there's one here, and oh, maybe there's one way up there, maybe there's one way up there. They just showed me a field of spiritual breadcrumbs. It's not like you get like one a month. They're going, nope, they're everywhere.
They are just like dandelions, they're everywhere.
Well, and it's interesting because as I'm looking at this field of breadcrumbs and I'm thinking, okay, if I pick up this one, is it different than if I pick up that one? Or in this particular field that they're showing me, do all of the breadcrumbs lead to the same next step? I don't know.
Good question. Or do they go in order? Is there a divine order for those breadcrumbs? And sometimes we have to meet up with somebody and then follow whatever the two are seeing. And we know that we've been given that promise that where two or more are gathered, and we set an intention. It's so much more powerful than if we're walking that path alone and seeing our breadcrumbs. Sometimes just talking to another person, having a conversation such as this, and opening up to possibilities. Another person can see things about us that we can't.
That's true. That's true. And sometimes we find breadcrumbs for each other. Yeah, that has happened. It's like, Teri, you need to be doing this. This is what they're showing.
Yeah, I fully believe that if someone is supposed to be in our life to walk this journey with, they're going to be there. Just open up to it.
So many times we hear people saying, I just don't know what my next step is. As if there's only one right next step. And what I'm hearing is just step. There's always more than one right next step. If you look at this field of breadcrumbs, any direction you step will lead to somewhere to some other next something. There's zero reason to just stay stalled. When Siri gives you directions and you go a different direction, and then Siri goes rerouting. If you get going in the wrong direction, you're going to get rerouted.
Mhm. And sometimes you take a U-turn.
Right.
Sometimes and you'll know because it won't feel in alignment. Like many times when I've stood up to Siri and said, no, I'm going to go this way, thinking that I'm going the right way. And sometimes I've gone miles out of my way before I give in and say, okay, I'll listen to you now. And we do that in life. We think, oh, I can handle this. I've got this. I know the right way to do it. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, let me step back and pay attention now. Now that I tried it on my own. And Ruth, a lot of times I make the statement that I plan and God laughs because we have this thing called free will. And when we think that we know it all, that's when we usually get in trouble. When we don't listen and we don't pay attention.
They're asking us to have faith, to trust and believe that their guidance is there for us if we ask for it. I'm thinking again of Harrod's daughter as she's standing there on the bank looking at this baby in a basket. And I'm wondering if she considered herself to be a godly young woman. And if she was hearing the nudging of pick up this baby, keep it safe, call it your own, if she at some point went, really? You're asking me to what?
What a big responsibility when you think of it. Feeding, taking care of the child. That's no small ask.
No, but she did have a lot of help.
Mhm.
So I think what they're showing with this is her having faith, trusting and believing that what she's being asked to do is what she's being asked to do. And there's no question that her life was completely different than she thought her life was going to be because she had that faith. So when we have that faith and when we step out and accept those breadcrumbs, is the possibility that our life is going to be so different than we were thinking. I hope so. My personal view of how big my life can get is, I hope, much smaller than what spirit thinks my life can be.
And I think it's important to know that if you're given something, a task, if you're given a purpose and you understand it, don't question how it's going to come about. That's the faith part, Ruth, that you mentioned. It's like, I don't know how that's going to happen. And a good friend of ours says, lose the how and get ready for the wow. And that just really describes how it works. Don't start questioning and saying, oh, that's not possible. I can't possibly do that. You know, when you think of this young, I think she was a young woman, Harrod's daughter, and if she could question, how am I going to take care of a baby? You know, how are we going to keep this baby safe? Because she had to know what was going on. She had to know what her father's um, decree was and to stand up to him, and how is it going to be possible? So if she just stood there and questioned, maybe she would have put the baby back in the basket. But just knowing that it was a divinely inspired thing for her to be there, just like each step that we take along our way, it's divinely inspired. And if God brings you to it, He's going to bring you through it. So pay attention to those breadcrumbs. That's what I'm hearing.
Also, not to hold yourself back. Not to keep yourself small. We're here on this earth right now for one lifetime. And maybe there's so much more out there for you than what you've ever imagined. We use the term all the time, get out of your own way. Yeah, I'm seeing this, Teri. There's a message here for you and for me on this. You know, when we talk about international travel, I think this is that. I think we're being asked, we're being called to do that, and we just need to get out of our own way. Yeah.
Go forward in faith.
Yeah. Wow. And it's so funny because I'm hearing the angels clapping. Oh my gosh, that was a journey in and of itself.
Right. Yeah, they love it when we finally get the message and they laugh with us.
Wow. Okay. Well, find the breadcrumbs, have the faith. As you're following the breadcrumbs, you're in the divine spotlight of being in the right space at the right time for the next thing to open up. And have faith, trust, and believe.
Love that message for us today, for all of us.
Yep, exactly. All right. Thank you, Teri. Friends here at Enlightened World Network, thank you for being here. There's always a message, and it's just a matter of figuring out what it is and how it pertains to our lives. So thank you for being here. So, Teri, anything else before we say goodbye?
I think it covered it. Just staying in the present moment helps a lot. And ask, just keep asking, keep questioning. What's my next step? What are you showing me, God? What's there for me to see those breadcrumbs?
Yeah.
I love this message today.
Yeah. Thanks, friends, for being here. So take good care. God bless.